What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm in a pretty sensational mood right now because I just got out of Ryan Coogler's latest movie, Black Panther. I believe it is the 18th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm a lifelong Marvel fan, been reading this stuff since like 1979. So every time there's a new Marvel movie, it is like having my birthday and New Year's and Halloween all rolled into one. But it's even more special when the movie's really good or delivers above and beyond my expectations. And while I really enjoyed Ryan Coogler's last movie, Creed, I thought it was absolutely sensational. I'm always worried when I see a young filmmaker make the jump from a modestly kind of mid-range budget film to these giant blockbusters. They can sometimes get kind of chewed up by the machinery. But I was relieved to see that Ryan Coogler is here to stay, and I have a feeling moving forward, he's going to be regarded as an A-list director because Black Panther is going to make piles of money. But the fact that it's highly entertaining means nerds like myself are going to go back for second and third helpings. And fingers crossed, maybe Kevin Feige can convince Ryan Coogler to stick around and make another one. Now, I absolutely do not wish to oversell Black Panther. It is a Marvel movie, and for some people, Marvel is just not their cup of tea, and I totally get it. There is a lighthearted flavor to the Marvel movies that sometimes is not necessarily what people are looking for. And while Black Panther introduces an entire new civilization and an entire new cast of characters to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and is obviously quite different from anything that's come before in the MCU, in the end, this is still a Marvel movie. So if you're a Marvel fan, you're just going to eat this up with a spoon like pudding. You're going to have an absolute blast. But my hope is that people who are casually curious about the Black Panther phenomenon, even if they typically don't like superhero movies, will at least give it a try, because I think they'll be genuinely surprised by how fresh and original and exciting this movie can be. And while some people rightly complain sometimes that with these giant movies, the distinctive personality of a storyteller or director can kind of get lost in the shuffle, there's a really interesting narrative twist to this where a lot of Ryan Coogler's own personal biography is intertwined with the villain played by Michael B. Jordan. I think it's a very easy case to be made that Michael B. Jordan is the best written and most exciting villain introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, probably since Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Marvel has a lot of lackluster, forgettable villains, but whenever Michael B. Jordan is on the screen, I found myself frequently having to remind myself, he's the villain, he's the bad guy, he wants to do horrible things, stop rooting for the bad guy. But Michael B. Jordan is just shredded in this. I mean, he looks like a fucking superhero, and he's covered in scars, he's incredibly charismatic, and he also has this incredibly engaging personal story, which I'll be getting to in the spoilers. Right now I'm just trying to speak in broad generalizations, but I like how this Marvel movie did not just have yet another interchangeable villain of the week. They really imbued him with an interesting personal narrative that makes it hard to want to root for either Black Panther or Killmonger in the final scenes of the movie. But what's fun about these standalone Marvel movies sometimes is seeing which characters from the supporting cast will become so popular that they translate into broader appeal so that they'll start appearing in other Marvel movies. And I think Letitia Wright as Shuri is 100% guaranteed to be a recurring character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward. She's adorable, she's brainy, she's brave, she's creative, and the fact that she's this technological wizard in a lot of ways, in the event of Robert Downey Jr. ever stepping away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he's played Iron Man like 150,000 times now, she could easily step into the role as the person designing technology and weapons and outfits for the characters moving forward. And as much as I love Michael B. Jordan's performance in this movie, there were times where Letitia Wright was in danger of running away with the movie and kind of stealing it from Chadwick Boseman. And lastly, before I get into my spoiler section of my review, I think it's interesting how this movie, it dances around certain political issues and kind of dips its toe into them, but never in any way, shape, or form do you feel like it's preaching at you or hitting you over the head with a hammer. When you're dealing with topics like colonialism in Africa, it's in a potentially highly combustible situation where tensions and emotions can run very high. But that's part of what makes the drama of the story so interesting, is that there is a political clash of wills between Black Panther and Killmonger. They have two very different worldviews and two very different ideas of how Wakanda should relate to the rest of the world. And what's interesting is that you even have a third perspective. Lupita Nyong'o plays a character named Nakia, and she's kind of in the middle between Killmonger and Black Panther. Black Panther's all about tradition and doing what his ancestors did, for basically allowing Wakanda to remain a highly advanced, technologically superior nation, but in total secrecy, cut off from the outside world. Killmonger basically wants to engage in a war of royal succession, take over all the wealth and weapons of Wakanda, and use it to wage war with the outside world. But Lupita Nyong'o's character, she has a different attitude where basically that they should crack the door open of Wakanda and start reaching out to the rest of the world in a way where they can share their knowledge and their science and their expertise in a way that'll help people desperately in need of the assistance they can provide. She has the idea that Wakanda is strong enough that they can maintain their traditions and they can maintain their culture while still at the same time being a friendly neighbor to the rest of the world. So it was fun seeing how Marvel dabbled a little bit in politics, but never in any way, shape, or form did it do so in a way that would alienate any potential viewers. Kevin Feige very wisely knows that these movies are mass appeal movies that need to appeal to everybody across the planet, no matter their nation or their creed or whatever the case might be. Marvel movies are for everybody. But because this movie is about an African superhero and it's directed by a black man from Oakland, California, there are a lot of people who are trying to hijack the movie for political discussions, and some of those people are trying to hijack it for good purposes. Some people are trying to hijack that discussion for really toxic purposes. And I would never tell anybody how they're supposed to watch a movie or how they're supposed to enjoy a movie or how they're supposed to discuss a movie, but don't allow yourself to be turned off to the idea of seeing Black Panther if you see some people on Facebook or Twitter who are shrieking about some political topic that you find unsavory. When it comes to creating clickbait for the internet, superhero movies now are so much in the public eye that people naturally are just going to try and distort whatever these movies might represent and try to use them for whatever their narrative they might be pushing. I do everything in my power to stay out of politics on this channel. I do everything in my power to stay out of politics on Twitter. I'm here to entertain, not to explain, and I think Black Panther has a similar attitude. It is here first and foremost to be an entertaining movie, and it is wildly successful in that endeavor. In any case, I've ranted and raved enough at this point. Let's talk about some spoilers and some specifics. So Black Panther, he's been around the Marvel Universe for a very long time. He was introduced way back in 1966 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They initially had quite a different idea of what they wanted Black Panther to look like. Thankfully, they eventually settled on the classic, sleek, all-black design that we all know and love. But over the last few decades, a ton of different writers and artists have taken a crack at the character. Some of these arcs are more famous than others. Some people really like Jack Kirby's run in the 1970s. Some people really like the stories that were written by Christopher Priest back in the late 90s. My personal favorite would probably have to be Jonathan Hickman's run on New Avengers. In that run, Black Panther's basically a member of this Illuminati of the most powerful superheroes, or basically kind of running the universe behind the scenes, and that includes like Iron Man and Reed Richards and a couple other characters. And that whole story arc really crescendoed and peaked with Secret Wars, where you have Black Panther taking on Doctor Doom, wielding an Infinity Gauntlet. It was totally badass. So if you like Black Panther, definitely check out Jonathan Hickman's run on the character. But what's cool about Ryan Coogler's movie is that you can see it taking bits and pieces and details from a bunch of different periods and a bunch of different eras related to the character. As I mentioned before, Killmonger is particularly well written in this, and while it does incorporate a lot of the elements of Killmonger's biography in the comics, they definitely made some changes to heighten the drama in the context of this story, because this is a royal succession civil war. And while I've only read a few comics ever that actually feature Killmonger, like the stuff that stays the same is his mercenary background and the fact that he went to MIT, but what they kind of tweak about his bio in this is that his father is the younger brother of T'Chaka, T'Challa's father, who we saw get killed in Civil War. But when it comes to Killmonger, I'm reminded of that expression, every villain is the hero of their own story. Because from his point of view, he's a kid growing up in Oakland, loves and adores his father, and one day, the Black Panther, T'Chaka, our Black Panther's father, shows up, has an argument with Killmonger's father. Turns out that he's basically a traitor to Wakanda, and he's also the king's younger brother. And when a fight breaks out, T'Chaka kills him then and there and leaves Killmonger behind. No resources, no family, no support, anything. And a lot of what this movie's about is our Black Panther starting to realize the mistakes that have been made in the past and the unintended consequences of those mistakes. Case in point, Killmonger, who basically grows up to be one of the most savage mercenaries in the world, and every time he kills somebody, he adds an extra scar to his body. And because of his extensive CIA training, he knows precisely how to disrupt regimes and topple nations. Martin Freeman's back as Everett K. Ross, and he basically explains about how anytime there is a change in government or a change in monarchy, that's the best time to try to come in and attempt a military coup or takeover or just disrupt the country, period. And that's precisely what Killmonger's trying to do. As T'Challa's wrestling with his new role as King of Wakanda, Killmonger wants to come in, challenge him to combat, push him aside, take over the weapons and technology of Wakanda, and essentially take over the world. But there's something insanely cool about a movie where everybody's speaking with these African accents, but Michael B. Jordan just leaning into his American accent. It creates this great culture clash because not everybody in this movie is from Africa, but they're all kind of doing this Wakanda accent. It's just yet another little detail that makes Killmonger an outcast among his own people that he should have grown up among. And I'm about to dive into heavy spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, please bail out. But in the comics, Killmonger's been killed several times, and he's always found a way to come back from the grave, like sometimes through the use of like one of the rings of the Mandarin, sometimes through strange rituals by his followers. But one of the most poignant and powerful scenes of this movie is as Killmonger's dying and Black Panther showing him the Wakandan sunset. And they're basically sharing a moment, but Killmonger would rather die than be imprisoned for his crimes, and he basically pulls a weapon out of his body, allowing himself to die. But there's no reason why we have to see the last of Killmonger as a result of that scene, because there is an established history of him coming back to life repeatedly in the comics. But probably the strongest attribute of this movie is the incredibly deep bench it has when it comes to its cast of characters. There's a minor character by the name of M'Baku, played by Winston Duke, who is funny as hell. He's this huge giant of a man, and he runs one of the main 5 tribes in Wakanda. And these 5 tribes are always kind of competing for the role of who's going to be king of Wakanda. And he's one of the few people who's willing to step up and challenge T'Challa in ceremonial combat when he's first being sworn in as king. But there's this absolutely astonishingly funny scene later in the movie when Martin Freeman is in his throne room, and every time he tries to speak, M'Baku and his soldiers will basically kind of like bark and growl over him and tell him that he's not allowed to speak or he'll be fed to his children. And then he just laughs like, ha, we're all vegetarians. But it was something about that scene, it just made me absolutely howl with laughter. And when M'Baku shows up at the end of the movie with his army to help basically save the day, to reinforce T'Challa and his allies against Killmonger and his army, it just makes your soul soar. I mean, if you're prone to getting chills while watching movies, you're going to get chills repeatedly throughout this. But what's really cool also is how this story goes through a couple different gears and phases. Initially, it's all about the challenges of T'Challa becoming the king, and then it kind of shifts into James Bond territory because we have Andy Serkis back as Ulysses Klaue. Klaue is one of my favorite characters from Marvel Comics. He was basically Doctor Doom's wingman in Secret Wars back in the day, and he at that point was basically composed of pure sound. But here we see Klaue with a robotic arm after having had his arm torn off in Age of Ultron. But we have all these great scenes over in South Korea in a casino where Black Panther and his badass female bodyguards are basically trying to capture Klaue and try to take him back to Wakanda. But for people who enjoy fully fleshed out otherworldly universes, I think they're going to be absolutely fascinated by Wakanda. I mean, Marvel Cinematic Universe has had Asgard to date, and basically this is Asgard but if Asgard were basically living in total seclusion and secrecy on the planet Earth, it's this wildly advanced society, and Vibranium is basically running through everything because Vibranium, this giant asteroid of it, got embedded in a mountain way back when, and they've been mining it for thousands of years. But you could set an entire series of movies just in Wakanda, and the good news is, with Avengers Infinity War right around the corner, we already know we're going to be treated to this enormous battle scene between the armies of Thanos and the armies of Wakanda with the Avengers at their side. It just looks so badass, but now we're going to be that much more invested in all these different characters. I mean, Michonne from The Walking Dead, who in this movie is called Okoye, who's lethal as hell and a total badass with her spear. We see that she's running right alongside Captain America and Black Panther into battle. But this movie really does deliver a massive payoff at the end, where you have all the various people who have chosen to be on Killmonger's side going to war with all the various people who have chosen to be on Black Panther's side. And it's like a black sci-fi Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just insane because they're fighting with highly evolved technology, but it's often in the form of spears and swords and axes and that sort of thing. But you also have like rhinos covered in vibranium armor running through. I mean, it really is almost like J.R.R. Tolkien and a secret African nation got together and cooked up some otherworldly universe. And while not all the fight scenes of the movie are created equal, most of the fight scenes involving Michael B. Jordan are pretty badass. I mean, I guess he's just so physically intimidating, and he probably remembers a lot of the choreography from Creed. And obviously, he's probably got a lot of boxing training and some martial arts training. The fight scenes with Michael B. Jordan are particularly good. So overall, I had an absolute blast with the movie. I'd have to give it some thought and another viewing, but it's probably going to end up in my top 5 Marvel movies. My favorite Marvel movie is still Captain America Civil War, but Black Panther is pretty damn fresh in my mind, and so I definitely want to give it another try. In the mix, I'd also include like Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America Winter Soldier, but yeah, Black Panther's in the mix as one of the strong. If you were to divide the Marvel movies into 3 tiers of 6 movies, like the top, the middle, and the bottom, it's definitely definitely in that top tier. But as Marvel fans, we can debate what are our favorites until the end of time, or at least until Infinity War comes out, which is right around the corner. And then we get Ant-Man a few months after that. I mean, we have 3 Marvel movies coming out a year now. It's just insane. Marvel's basically creating the biggest, most expensive, badass TV show ever created. I stuck around for the post-credit sequences, and the first one's pretty interesting. It's just Black Panther talking to the United Nations, but the last one's fantastic. And we see Letitia Wright's character Shuri looking after one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe, Bucky, aka Sergeant Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. And he obviously now is out of suspended animation. They've clearly fixed his head. He's still missing his arm, but something tells me she's going to give him a badass arm before he goes into battle in the Avengers Infinity War, because we've seen him in the trailer, you know, cocking a machine gun. But in Wakanda, machine guns are basically Tinker Toys. I'm sure when they give him a new arm, it's going to be capable of some amazing things. I feel like this review's starting to run a little long, so I'm going to wrap it up. But there's so many things I haven't even gotten to yet. The fact that this movie has like Angela Bassett and Forrest Whitaker and all these incredible actors. Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out. I mean, like I said before, when it comes to having a deep bench of talent, the cast in this is just totally badass. If you want to see beautiful, badass black people doing very, very cool things, this movie is the absolute motherload when it comes to that. In any case, I'm going to wrap this review up. I hope you've enjoyed my little rant, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. But I'm eagerly looking forward to checking out this movie again. But if you want to get a more deep dive, comprehensive coverage of this movie, we're going to be tackling it on my podcast, Wrong Reel, tomorrow evening. It's going to be 5 of us doing a roundtable conversation. We'll be looking under every single stone that we possibly can. But thank you so much for watching my review. I really appreciate it. Feel free to give me a shout in the comments below or on Twitter at Colbrex if you want to talk more about Black Panther or Marvel or anything else under the sun. And I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, but definitely go check out Black Panther. It's an awesome time to be a superhero fan, and I just can't wait to see what comes next in Avengers Infinity War. So long.